In this segment of Bedrock Training, we're going to learn how to obtain a federal tax ID number. And we start with irs.gov. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through every step of the way here, and you're going to see how you can do this yourself. I don't recommend anybody doing this stuff on their own. But if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you're brave enough to tread these dangerous waters, this is how we do it. So I'm going to just go back there a second and point out that I am going to File and then go over here to the right to the Employer Identification Number. And now what's going to happen is they put up a couple of roadblocks here. Not so much roadblocks, but warning signs, because they don't want everybody to just arbitrarily go and apply for a tax ID number. But we're going to go through all of these different road signs and we're going to say begin application. And this is important. So if you check off the wrong box here or button, you're going to get letters and notices and somebody's going to have to undo it. So for this purpose, we are getting a tax ID number for a corporation. And now this is a little odd to me because they include here S corporation, which you can't be an S corporation unless you first have a federal tax ID number. So what we first have to do is get a tax ID number for a corporation. Applying to be treated as an S corp is a different step. There's a form that's involved and you need your federal tax ID number. So this is important also that you check off corporation again, because I'm going to go back again just so you see. And this is part of why people get messed up, because it's confusing. If you've never done this before and you start reading the instructions, it's going to be impossible. So again, all I did, because I clicked very quickly, I'm going to hit corporation. So you have to know that it's corporation, 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 what it is, what it isn't. We want to continue, and we started a new business. Okay, this is a brand new entity, and forget about all of the other options here. You will never ever need them. So we started a new business, and this is where you got to start being held accountable, because they call this the responsible party. Now, what is a responsible party? That is the person that they're going to hold accountable if there's any kind of question on the corporate return, such as who's signing this, who's responsible for paying the payroll taxes, and stuff like that. They need a go-to person. So this is the first step where you're telling them who exactly is in charge here. And now I'm typing this in. This is a real tax ID application. Okay, I'm going to mask the people's identity to protect the innocent. But this is an actual application. So you're going to see from start to finish how this works. And you got to go through this slowly, because one wrong number will mess up the whole application. And then you're going to be back to square one. You put the wrong name here, the wrong social security number. It's going to cause problems. And so now what they want to do is they want to know, are you the president or are you a third party? So I am a third party, and I am a third party designee. Now, if you're the CEO, there was another box there where you print out the CEO. And now they want to know who am I? And again, you gotta make sure that you do this slow. Or maybe I'm slow because I'm a slow typer, but after I type it, I'm looking at the screen and making sure that everything is spelt right. I have the right address, all the right information, and they're telling me that I have a special character here. Okay, so sometimes, okay, so the address came up through a pre-filled form and there was a comma in there. So I got a feeling that the IRS website doesn't like the comma, and that's what happens. Now they want to know, where's the corporation physically located? Okay, physically, you cannot use a PO box. And if you see over here, do not enter a PO box. They want a place where, and now if you're running out of your house, if you're operating the business out of your house or apartment, that's the address you use here. Now, I've had people question me about other issues that have nothing to do with obtaining the tax ID number. For instance, local, city, and state laws concerning business. You know, it's not just the IRS in charge here, it's anybody, any government agency that has jurisdiction over us. And all we're doing here is getting a tax ID number, and we're letting the IRS know where we are. Okay, as far as state, city, local laws, they don't come into play here. Okay, and then it asks if you want to have the mail sent to a specific person. It's going to go, no, we know who it's going to. Now, this is a small business corporation. Some of this stuff, a lot of it will not apply, and I'll skip over it. Don't be alarmed. If you want to put a specific person here, you can have it addressed to whoever you want. So it might not even be the owner of the company. It could be the accountant. It could be anybody you designate, but leaving it blank is not a problem. Do you have an address different where you want the mail sent? Okay, so they want the physical location, but you can have the mail sent somewhere else. Now, if you say yes, you can have it sent to a PO box, but to get the ID number, they want to know exactly, where you're doing business with the tax law. So now up here is the legal name. Now that's the name that it's got to be the exact name as it appears in your state certificate of organization. Your trade name is, you only put that if it's different from the legal name. In other words, you can relate to this as a doing business as. Only doing business as is for a sole proprietor. For corporation, the states usually call it a fictitious name. So you could also be doing business under another name. And we have, again, where is it incorporated? What county is it in? That's pre-filled by the IRS because you've already given them your zip code. And the state where we're incorporated is California. Okay, so in other words, you can be incorporated in another state, but you're doing business in California. For our purposes, for strictly new small businesses, this is almost always going to be the same. And now they want to know, when did you start up? So this business just started September 2019. This is important because right away you're giving the IRS notice that if you're going to stay as a C Corp, in other words, you're not going to elect S status, and sometimes there's reasons for this, that your return, your first return, cannot end later than August 31st. Now, the reason for that is if you're going to elect what they call a fiscal year rather than a calendar year, you cannot operate for more than a year. So I can't, and it's always got to be the year end date has to be the last day of the month. So if I start on September 3rd, I can't have a year end that's September 30th or after. So at the most, I can let this corporation's year end be August 31st, 2020, okay, unless I'm going to be an S Corp. Now, S Corps are almost 100% on what we call a calendar year. And that just means that it ends in December. Now, for this corporation, I'm not going to elect S status right away for tax purposes, but that's a whole nother issue. So also keep in mind that this can change. Your year end can change later on. If we decide to be an S Corp with the calendar year, that'll change. This is simply to get our tax ID number. Now, again, these are specific taxes that we got to tell them about. We're not a trucking company. We're not doing highway motor vehicle. We're not a gambling establishment. Now, these are all special taxes that have to do with specialized industry. We don't deal with alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. And now this is important because if you say yes, you will start getting payroll notices. And now for this situation, I don't see this company as being profitable and having the money to pay employees. It's going to be a one shareholder, non-salaried employee because that's what happens in the beginning. So I'm going to say no. Just so hopefully we're going to stop some of the junk mail. Now, if we say yes, you're on their radar. Now you got to go through the payroll tax compliance course, which is another course. Again, this is all just to get a tax ID number. Now, this is another very important area because we have to tell the IRS what type of business we are. This is where the audit red flags start going. Okay, now being an S Corp makes you 1,000% less likely to get audited than being a sole proprietor. But the IRS still has their own algorithms. So a construction company is going to have a different set of expenses and cost ratios than a food service or a healthcare service. Okay? Now, we have to choose, and we want to choose carefully. And what are our choices here? We have accommodations, construction, finance. This is all pretty standard. You know, if you're in one of these industries, you're going to know manufacturing, real estate, rental, retail, social assistance, transportation, warehousing, or other. Now, this is important because if we say we're in the food service industry, there are other taxes that apply to the food service industry, such as a restaurant that hires waiters and waitresses, and there's a tip tax. There's a tax on the tips, and that's a whole complicated calculation because a lot of them are in cash, and you know that's another area. But I'm only pointing this out so that you make sure that you choose the right one. Because when you file your tax return, they're going to match up what you said it is with what it actually is. On your tax return, they get even more detailed. Okay, but just out of research purposes, I just clicked on wholesale. So they give you a little more of an explanation of what that category is. Now, a lot of times I get clients that don't fit into any of these categories. Okay, I do deal with a lot of people providing health coaching. Okay, but we don't provide social assistance. We don't provide this. We don't provide this, and we don't provide this. So my clients, a lot of them fall under other. And this could be the consulting industry. It could be some type of organization. Anything that doesn't fit under what we already have. For instance, if you're selling stuff on eBay, you might want to choose this. If you're repairing motorcycles, actually that would go into auto. If you're renting lawn chairs. But the point is that we want to match this up. And what this business owner is doing is this is holistic health care. Okay, so what they are doing is providing courses and coaching and stuff like that. So I'm going to put them under consulting. So now you also got to understand what type of expenses does a consultant have. They might buy, marketing materials, events, training, education, stuff like that. They might hire their own business coaches, supplies, marketing, and that's what we're going to have on this business's tax return. So now they want a little bit more of an explanation on what type of consulting are we doing. And this is going to be not to businesses. We are going to provide training to individuals. And that's it. Now we have our review screen, and all we have to do is hit submit. Now once we hit submit, we've applied for a federal tax ID number, and they give it to us right there. And this is very, very important. What I do is I like to take a screenshot. We're done. You just applied for a tax ID number. What happens after this is they're going to send you a paper document which you should save, because sometimes the banks want to see the paper document. But now you can open your bank account. You can start doing business. Because before you had this tax ID number, you did not have an operating entity. You really have been doing business, if you have been doing business, outside of the corporation. Now, there's a way to capture those expenses, which is a whole nother bedrock lessons, but I want to thank you for joining me, and hopefully you know how to get a tax ID number now for your business. Thank you.